Welcome to Surthrival, the podcast about befriending grief. I'm your host, Stacia Gaines. Today, we start a series that honestly I've really been dreading. And if you're a listener, just be aware that this episode and this series is going to be about suicide. And this may be something not appropriate for young audiences, or it could be a trigger for you. So, as many of you know, my husband Matt took his own life. And so my grief is death by suicide. This is hard to talk about. My story is that I was aware that he had suicidal ideation. I had a close friend who was a suicide counselor, and she gave me some tools and gave me questions to ask. So I wasn't totally shocked, but I was shocked when it happened. It was a Saturday, and I was awaiting my daughter and her husband and my one grandchild to come, and the sheriff showed up at my door, and my life was forever changed by the knock and the news that Matt had been found dead. A lot of people, most people, we don't really want to talk about suicide, but I've recognized and realized that it is a lot more common than people think, and we've got to talk about it. We have to talk about it. Otherwise, we can't do anything about it. So we're going to be vulnerable in these episodes. And my purpose, as always, is to educate, to give you tools to deal with this kind of grief. And this is a very unique kind of grief. It's like no other. It comes with a lot of guilt and blame and mostly shame. It's a very taboo topic. And that may be one of the reasons that we're, kind of losing the battle, because we're not talking about it. So I'm so grateful to have with me as my guest Meesha Emmett. Meesha is the Alabama area director and, to my knowledge, sole employee of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention of the Alabama chapter. Meesha, I think we knew each other prior to you moving into this role, and then after my husband died, she reached out and told me, just kind of consoled me and told me she had experience and just offered consolation in a really helpful way to me. And so she has agreed to come on. Meesha's a very honest and vulnerable person. She's very knowledgeable about this. And she also speaks to it from personal experience. So, Meesha, thank you so much for joining us on Surthrival. Tell my listeners a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I am the Alabama Area Director for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and I am currently the only staff member for the state. Hopefully, that will change soon. That's certainly the goal. But yeah, I've been involved with AFSP first as a loss survivor myself after the loss of my best friend in 2013. Volunteered for 9 years. That included being a walk chair, joining the board of directors, and then leading the chapter as board chair before I was hired in the fall of 2022. So something that I never anticipated, a world I never anticipated that I would be a part of. But
It's the club no one wants to join.
exactly. None of us. But there is nothing more important to me. There's nothing I believe in more than the mission of AFSP, right? And to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide.
Yeah. Meesha, I told a bit of my story Would you mind sharing your story of losing Alex?
Sure. So Alex and I, we grew up together in Florence, Alabama. Alex was just truly one of a kind. She was she was just she's just the best person, the brightest light, a brilliant artist. Um and like myself and so many other people, she had her silent battles. In May of 2013, I received the phone call that just blew my world up. This person that had always been my person as you navigate the fun of middle school, the drama of middle school and high school and so on. Just that constant bright light, constant kindness. Um, yeah, I learned of her passing on May 2nd. It was just devastating. Um, and it's been almost 13 years, but it feels like yesterday. And it grounds me. That loss, while devastating, continually devastating, she's my why. Alex is the reason I got involved with AFSP after that debilitating grief subsided or became less intense, because grief is not linear, healing's not linear. I just, I made her a promise as I was leaving the graveside that it wouldn't be in vain, that her death would not be in vain, and that I was going to do everything in my power to keep anyone else's friends or loved ones from having to experience that type of pain, and to get people the help that they needed. But yeah, again, like you said, it's the club that nobody wants to be a part of. I struggled also throughout my teenage years, and I mean, I have no problem sharing that I do suffer from anxiety and depression. Again, everyone's journey is different, but there was a little bit of how did I overcome, the back and forth, the kind of the guilt, I think, that we all, that a lot of survivors share that they feel after a loved one's loss. But yes, that was one of the greatest losses that I've ever endured.
Yeah.
And I don't want anybody else to have to go through this. So I am committed to doing whatever that takes.
Yeah. I'm sorry for your loss, and it's just difficult in so many complex ways. Um, Misha, I know that you're very passionate about this, and I know that there are a lot of listeners who probably would be surprised at some of the statistics. I myself, just in the last couple of weeks, have found I've had two or three examples where I've learned that a friend thought about, as she says, taking the off ramp. I'm often surprised by the number of people who have considered taking their own lives. Can you share just some facts about the numbers? I think people would be very surprised.
Yes. So, I mean, mental health generally, there is a very large percentage of individuals. Most people, well, let me backtrack a little bit. It is alarming the number of people in our lives that we don't know are carrying the weight of so much, and as a result have considered ending their lives just to get away, to get out of the very deep and intense emotional pain that often, coexists with. Most alarming in terms of suicide ideation are the statistics that are focused on youth. So youth, for the purposes of this conversation, individuals ages 10 to 24, 15 to 24, right? Suicide's the third leading cause of death for that age group. In terms of ideation, research has shown that 2 in 10 high school students has considered suicide,
Wow.
and 1 in 10 has actually attempted.
Wait, 10% have attempted
One in 10.
suicide?
1 in 10. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow. That's just staggering.
Yeah. It
Is it,
and
did I hear that it's the second leading cause of youth death? Like after car accidents? Did I make that up or is that
No,
true?
no, 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 no. It varies by state. So overall, suicide's the third leading cause of death for that
Okay.
group, that 15 to 24. Alabama, our data fall, it coincides with that. So it reflects the same. It's the
Okay.
third leading cause.
Um, you said something to me earlier
Mhm.
that really struck me, that it is the single cause of death that is 100% preventable.
Yes. Yes. I mean, suicide is very different than, those types of terminal illnesses in that while, we're making fantastic advances with research and cures and things like that, there's something that we can do about this. There's something that we can do to reduce the suicide rate in our state, in our country, and it's the 13th leading cause of death and the only one that is 100% preventable.
All right, let's talk about prevention. We likely have listeners who are concerned about someone in their life. They worry every day that this loved one might take the steps to end their life. And I've experienced that, and it's one of the most terrifying things that you can deal with, and that fear never goes away. We also probably have listeners who right now have suicidal ideation and may be thinking, you know what, like, it ain't worth it. Like, if I were to die, no one would care, or they may care for a little while, but they'll be better off without me. Can we talk about prevention? Because if this is 100% preventable, and by the way, let me just say here, if you have lost someone to suicide, I'm not saying you could have prevented it. That is not what we're saying at all. That is not part of my evangelism. So this is not for the person that has lost someone.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about it, Meesha. What can we do?
Yeah, well, first, I want to thank you for making that distinction because that's very important. Again, suicide loss is so complex. We want to make sure that that's very clear. But in terms of prevention, it does feel like this insurmountable thing that there's absolutely that we don't stand a chance against, right? But that's just not the case. There's so much that we as individuals and we collectively can do to reduce the suicide rate and keep our loved ones and ourselves safe. So let's start with the little things. How we speak about suicide matters. That is perhaps one of the most important things, the thing that we can start changing immediately. So forever, most of us have heard people refer to someone that's died by suicide as someone who committed suicide. Well, if you think about the word committed, and when we hear that, like in mainstream media, it's most often associated with a crime,
Mm,
right? And so there's an implication of judgment there.
hmm.
We would never say, well, my grandfather committed cancer, right? It's laughable. We would never say that. But for years, century, even,
Yeah.
like they committed suicide. Dying by suicide is not a crime, no more than cancer is a crime. So we've got to be cognizant of how we speak about it. Because if I'm a person struggling and the people around me are talking about suicide in that way, well, this person committed suicide, committed. My brain is connecting it to where I hear it the most, right? And the judgment is there. So I then would assume that you're not a safe person for me to talk about my struggles to.
Hmm.
And so that's critically important.
You changed my vocabulary when I heard you speak because I was like, that makes so much sense. But even as a suicide survivor, I was using that language.
Right? And we all
So
do. And
thank you
so
for correcting me and helping me to see. I still catch myself sometimes.
right, right. And we all do that even after a loss until we learn what we should say and do, right? People
Mhm.
don't know what they don't know. And
Right.
so instead of saying committed, we encourage the use of died by suicide, ended their life, or referring to it as a death by suicide.
Okay.
And
Great.
then in terms of suicide attempts, we discourage the use of successful or unsuccessful, failed or successful, right? That extra language is just unnecessary and it's just not helpful.
Great.
So they are a
So,
person who struggles, who has lived experience. That's how we would refer to them.
mhm.
And then finally, individuals who have lost someone to suicide, like you and I, we are suicide loss survivors, or we could be described as suicide bereaved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. That's really happened. So change our language. That's not simple, but it's something we can do. It just
Right.
takes
We
some
can all
intentionality.
do that. Exactly. And it makes a huge difference.
Okay. So what else?
So, I mean, we have to establish some type of comfort level with saying the word suicide. I get that question a lot in our
Mhm.
trainings and things like that. Like, I'm worried about someone. Do I have to say suicide? It's critically important that we are comfortable saying the word suicide, and it's heavy. It's a heavy word that we are taught and conditioned, I believe, to not say. It's one of those unmentionables, if you will.
Yeah, it's
But
very taboo.
right, we've got to be able to talk about it. If you were to ask me if I'm experiencing suicide ideation, am I thinking, or ask me if I'm thinking about suicide, that's very different than asking me if I'm thinking about hurting myself. Right?
Right.
I think that distinction is very important, particularly with our youth. There's data and research that shows just the rise of like harm.
Hmm.
And while, certainly tragic in its own way, it's not the same.
Hmm.
So we need to ask that question directly. Are you thinking about suicide?
Okay.
Right? And,
And some people, like myself included, would have thought, well, wait a minute, if I ask the person, then I might plant an idea. Maybe they weren't thinking about suicide, but now they are because I planted this idea.
no, and that I'm glad you said that. That is a very common misconception, especially when having that conversation with young people. The thought is, by speaking about it, I am planting the seed, and that's just not how it works. And research has shown that it's not what I think, that's something that is proven. In fact, asking them may lead, or it will more than likely lead to them responding and being more open and receptive to getting help now that you've established yourself as a trusted person in their life, or a person that is
Mhm.
concerned about their well-being.
And how often, Misha, do you find people being honest when asked that question?
In my personal experience, I think more often than not, people respond honestly. If you think about it, we have gatekeeper trainings and things that teach you how to ask the question safely and things like that. But people will give what are called invitations to the person that they're around, right? Almost that cry for help is what we refer to it as. Like,
Right.
I'm telling you, I don't know if it's all worth it. I feel like a burden. What's the use? What's the point? Like, I'm letting you know that something is wrong instead of hiding it.
Okay.
So when you hear those things,
Then
those are
what do you
often
do?
invitations. Yeah, you just start the honest conversation like, hey, I've noticed that you don't seem like yourself lately. Like if you have a loved one that you know is very social, right? And then they become really withdrawn. Just paying attention to what the signs that they're displaying. Usually those signs, and every situation is different, but usually they're going to present in three ways through what they're saying. So talk, behavior, how they're acting, and then their mood or disposition. So when you see major changes in any of those areas, it's time to have an honest conversation. And we all know the people in our lives better than anyone else, right? So we know what they're going to be receptive to in terms of communication, but we've just got to say something,
And you
right?
know what? It's a terrifying conversation to have with somebody you care about. It really is. I think that when I had that conversation with my husband, I mean, like it took all the courage I had to ask, and I was surprised by the response was maybe, and so that let me know that the answer was yes. Really hard, but really, really, I don't know. I think sometimes when a loved one is is displaying those behaviors, and you know things are not right, we feel so helpless, so out of control. Like we feel like there is nothing we can do. These questions are actually something we can do. No, we can't control the answer we're going to get,
Right.
but it is something that we can do. So what other questions? So let's say the person says, "Yeah, I have. Like things are really tough right now. What else? What else should you say or do?"
Okay, so if they indicate that they have thought about it or they are experiencing suicide ideation, it's helpful to get an idea of if they have a plan, right? Have they,
Mhm.
how far they've thought through this? That will help you, the person asking the question, assess like the severity. I mean, it's a severe situation
Right.
anyway, but just how we need to respond. I mean, at that point, if they say, yes, I have a plan, I have means, we need to get them connected to help immediately. What that looks like right then, like, hey, would you like to call 988 together? Would you like me to call 988 for you or
Which
be
is the suicide prevention
life?
hotline, right?
Mhm.
988.
Yes. And 988 is a wonderful resource. It's completely free. It's available to everyone in every state across the country.
Available to those who have concerns about someone.
Correct.
I
Correct.
actually used it as
Yes.
a concerned wife.
Yes. Yes. And so you can speak to the advice and tools that they were able to give to you as you work to help him through that moment. But yeah, assessing where they are in their plan, because sometimes, time is a very important thing. That us having these conversations, it's buying us time for that moment of crisis to calm down, and then time to get them connected to help. Time is a life-saving thing, and I cannot stress that enough. Putting time between the person who's experiencing suicide ideation and their means of ending
Mhm.
their life is critical.
Okay.
And it's
So don't put it off. If
no,
you think you need to have this conversation, do it now.
correct. And it's going to be awkward. It
It is awkward.
absolutely
It's
is.
extremely awkward.
You're going to get in your own head about it, but you've got to push through and ask the questions anyway.
And I'm assuming, Misha, that when you're having this conversation, when you're asking the question, that your response needs to be non judgmental.
Yes, it is very, very important that you are as self aware as possible in that moment, right?
And you don't go, "Oh my goodness." You know, like, no,
Right.
like, oh, okay.
A lot of us are fixers naturally. This is not the moment for that. Our role in this conversation is to listen. to listen. You may be the only person that this individual trusts enough to speak to about what they're experiencing.
Yes.
And how you respond is critically important. We are there to listen. We're not there to judge. We are not there, in our presentation. That's not the time.
Talk them out of it. Like, oh, you've got so much to live for. Why would you?
Exactly.
None of that.
Exactly. You're there to listen and then get them connected to help. Those are our two primary objectives in that moment.
Listen and get them connected to help.
Yes. Yes. And, depending on how the conversation goes, getting them connected to help is the most important. But letting them know after that, like, I'm going to check back in on you tomorrow and next week, just that this is going to be an ongoing thing, that your concern is not isolated to just that moment, that they can always talk to you if they find themselves experiencing a moment of crisis like this again, but that you're here, and you want to get them connected to the help that they need.
Meesha, at what point? Let's assume that this person is a 15-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of responsibility does someone have to alert a parent or a teacher or someone that they are concerned about this person? Is this person going to feel like they have betrayed their confidence? Talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, and that is actually a very big worry for that peer-to-peer, for youth and their peers. There's a big concern that they might be upset with me. They might get mad if I tell a teacher or their parents. You've got to do it anyway.
Yeah. And do you tell the person that you're going to tell someone?
Yes, it's always better to be honest about that. And,
Okay.
for youth or adults, this is a lot. And being honest about, okay, I want to make sure to get you the help that you need. This is a little bit outside of, so I need to get us some backup, right? Some additional assistance. And people are almost usually so grateful for the help.
Okay. Because they probably in their spirit gone, really don't want to do this. I'm afraid, but I just don't see a way out.
And they're not alone. You're showing them in that moment, you're
Yeah.
not alone. Like, I'm right here with you. I'm going to call 988 with you. We can talk to your parents together.
Or let's talk to Mrs. So and so, a
Right, a
trusted
trusted
teacher, or
adult.
school
Yes,
counselor, or
yes. And
somebody you both trust.
exactly. Another thing, for everyone, not just specific to youth, but I do think it's critically important with young people, is we're at this place now where, unfortunately, across the board, people say, "Oh, I'm just going to kill. I just want to kill myself," and they talk about suicide in a very flippant way,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we
Or
have
make jokes.
right,
They're like
right,
there was actually my daughter was triggered a couple of times by some of the college kids just making light of it, like
right,
you know, and we have to change. We have to change that, and
right.
not. I
This
mean, that's always been present, right?
Right, it has. But like now with youth, if some teenager, if anyone, but especially youth says, I just want to kill myself, we have to take it seriously. You
Yeah.
have to treat anything that you notice or hear like it's real.
Yeah.
Right? If you hear something or notice something, you have to treat it as if you're the only person in their life that's going to see or notice. Because you very well may be.
Wow. Wow.
And it's not like, well, I'm sure their mom and dad will say something, or I'm sure their coworker or spouse or someone has noticed and they'll check on them. Like, if you see something, you say something. We've got to check on our people.
Okay. Is there anything we're missing on this prevention? Like, somebody or you are somebody who's considering this. Anything else that we need to be thinking about, asking, doing, saying, or have we covered it?
I think in terms of the honest conversation and just changing our language, that language piece is very important and really makes a tremendous difference. Just checking in on people. We were speaking earlier and I mentioned, here in the South, we mind our own business and we don't want people in our business. This is all bets are off when it comes to someone's safety, right? And we have to overcome, and it's hard. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not easy for me, and this is what I do for work, but at the end of the day, this honest conversation could save someone's life and likely will save someone's life.
Yeah.
And it's establishing yourself as a safe person in the lives of the people around you. If you have participated again in these awkward conversations, it's because you're a trusted person.
Yeah.
Right? And I just think that's something really important to keep in mind. Each of us, again, as individuals, there's so much that we can do. And it all at its core begins with an honest conversation.
Yeah. All right. So to summarize, suicide and suicidal ideation is way more common than any of us would like to think. Because it is taboo and we don't understand it, there's a lot of guilt, blame, and shame associated with suicide. However, it is preventable. And the more that we can educate ourselves and learn what to do, even though we don't have the power to prevent it, we can become a trusted friend. When we're concerned about a loved one, we can ask them the question, are you considering suicide? We listen to their answer without judgment and without fixing. We can ask a follow-up question such as, do you have a specific plan to take your life? To kind of gauge how far along they may be. And then we can support them, not by fixing it, by coming alongside them and getting help, whether it's calling 988 or going to a counselor, going to a trusted friend. We support them in getting the help because we're not equipped
Right.
to handle that. And then we follow up with them. We don't just go, okay, check off. I've done these things. We tell them, look, I'm going to check back with you, the end of the week or whatever you feel is, and because I care about you and I want to make sure you're okay.
Right. I want to make this very clear. Like I was telling you earlier, we're not in a place in our state, in our country, where we can continue to bury our heads in the sand when it comes to conversations about mental health and suicide. The last research presented by the CDC, the state of Alabama, there were 869 suicide deaths in our state.
In a year?
Yes.
Okay.
869. And this isn't one of those, well, that'll never happen here. It's happening here. And we need people to get involved. Have these conversations if you notice something different in your loved ones. But tap us in if you want to learn more. There's not a single space, not a single community, faith, house of worship, civic organization, social organization, school. There's not a single group, not a single person that would not benefit from learning more about ways to help, signs to look for, and effective methods of keeping themselves and their loved ones safe. That is what AFSP is here to do. All of our trainings and our programming is completely free of charge. We have programming for everyone. For everyone. So if that's something that you're interested in learning more about or participating in, please visit our chapter page at afsp.org/Alabama.
And listeners, there'll be some resources as well as this site in the show notes. So I just encourage you to reach out to this organization, to Meesha. She's very passionate about this. And Meesha, we're going to continue the conversation in the next episode. But I thank you so much for your knowledge and your wisdom and for sharing with us about this tough topic.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be a part of the conversation, and thank you for your vulnerability. I know it's not easy, but it's greatly appreciated.
All right. Thank you, listeners. Tune in for part 2 with Meesha Emmett regarding suicide prevention.